Can you give us more of an idea whether you think this is a good route and why it would be done in the United States?
Mhm. This is a listed company, PAL Holdings, and I think the message to investors is that it's on its way to recovery. That's the biggest news now because of the breakthrough deal that was clinched, and I think this is going to be good for this entity, which is really part of our nation building. It has a strategic value to our economy. This ensures that we retain our connectivity with the rest of the world because PAL operates as a long haul flight, and it's good that we get to retain such a big entity, and ensuring that it's in a better shape, because the reality of the travel industry has changed. The pandemic, the Delta variant has changed so many variables within the operating environment, like demand, consumer behavior has changed, and then the health protocols, that so many things need to be observed, the testing, and then the quarantine. So the travel industry and aviation has become more complicated, and of course PAL has to be relevant and has to be fitter and more efficient. Given the new operating environment, I think this is a new beginning for PAL. Reduced balance sheet, reduced leverage, and fresh capital infusion from all the stakeholders, stockholders, the banks, and it's good for everybody. And I think once this gets implemented, it's going to signal to the world that the aviation industry of the Philippines is able to bounce back. This is going to be a good template for distressed firms, and really the very good execution of the stockholders with the rest of the creditors. This is a good development really for PAL, and a good signal for the Philippine economy as a whole and for the investors.
Ma'am, can you expect any more growth if this does push through? They will be, of course, as you mentioned, reducing their debt. There's a new equity infusion, but at the same time, the fleet will be cut by 25% necessarily. They're returning 20 aircrafts. They've already cut, even before this fighting, 35% of the workforce. What makes it seem that these numbers and the reduced operations will bode well for this carrier?
Mhm. I think it's a question of scale. What's the appropriate quantum of scale, operating scale for PAL? And given the demand dynamics of the travel industry, the aviation industry, and the global economic recovery as a whole, PAL has to really reshape its operating scale, and doing it by way of a reduction in some of the drugs on the operations, like your debt, like the asset size. Given the reduced demand, it has to be positioning in a different way. And this is also not very unique to PAL. It is something that the realities of the industry has changed. It is something that most airlines will have to cope with. And until we emerge from this pandemic, then we cannot really see a very strong revival for the travel industry. It's really the virus and the pandemic and the economic crisis that this has caused, which has changed the uh, the dynamics of the industry, and therefore airlines and the players will have to change the way they operate. They will have to redefine their objectives and mission. Are they going to stick to being a long haul flight operator, or are they going to be just concentrating on the mass market? Cebu Air is on the mass market. Uh, uh, PAL is a bigger scale, playing the big league, and since the industry has changed, then it has to change. It has to reduce, and this is a good signal, a new beginning for PAL.
Ma'am, can you really say that it was simply because of the pandemic that caused this? Because losses have been there since pre-pandemic, so since 2017. But of course, this year has been dramatically bad for PAL. Last year, they were down 17% in terms of their shares. So tell us, would this be business as usual, since even before the pandemic, they were already struggling to even break even?
I think the pandemic has just aggravated what has been a very difficult period for PAL even before the virus struck, and it requires that management redefines the business model that it wants to use, to adopt, and this is looking to be a very big reality check for the management. They will have to redefine their objectives, their mission, the market that they're going to operate, given the new realities on the ground. And the pandemic is a big eye opener, and jump starting the way management should look into the new dynamics of the industry. And it's not only PAL, it's all airlines of the world that are now going to be doing their own reshaping of the operations and the target markets that they're going to be going into.